Welcome to the Dystopian Renaissance. We cover spirituality, healing, consciousness, and truth. In this chaotic world we live in, it's important to get out of the matrix, and we'll do just that with biohacking, nutrition, spiritual awakenings, alternative healing, and freedom. This is the Dystopian Renaissance, and this is your host, Johnny Sage.
Welcome to the Dystopian Renaissance podcast. I'm your host, Johnny Sage, and I'm sitting today with Angie Brooks. She's an intuitive counselor and a medicine woman. So, how did all this start? Did you have a spiritual awakening first, or what called you to all this originally?
Wow, that's a loaded question. I think for many of us, it just kind of started out as seemingly one little thing, and then everything just kind of connected the pieces. And I would say for me, it was more it really started with religion. So my father was Baptist and my stepfather is Hebrew. And so I grew up in two different, very, very different households when it came to religion. And through that, I started learning more just about like the government systems and really just how it was not what I thought it was. And so I would say that my true awakening really started probably when I was around 19 or 20, when I went out, when my stepfather gave me a Bible and he said, go out and do your own research. And, you find what's best for you. And in that quest, I was able to meet a lot of people of many different religions. And what I found was there were certain aspects that really spoke to me and other aspects that did not. And from there, I just found that my religion was love. And it didn't matter how people came to it. It was more like, whatever it is that's bringing you to your higher self, I respect that and I love that. And I really felt that it was very important for me just as an individual to really find what worked best for me. And I lived my life even way back then before the awakening, just going out into the world and being pure, helping people if they needed help and really just going out and doing my best. So it started there. That was kind of like the big bubble, I want to say. And then I started learning about the government, and I'm a product of a military family. So my mother's from Okinawa and my father is native to the United States. And, he was in the military. My entire family is military. And once I learned about government corruption, that was really like just an explosion inside of me. And it was very, it was very unearthing for me. I couldn't believe that we were in a system that did not care about people as much as I loved people and the earth and human life and value and all of that. So I would say that was that was definitely the beginning. And from there, it led me like deep into depression and anger.
Yeah. So yours was more like awakening to the physical world first, like the true stuff. And
yes.
Yeah, I was that way at first as well.
Mm-hmm.
And before spirituality, you were introduced to religion first, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And did you find like it had, I don't want to say shortcomings, but it wasn't for you? Like you said, you want to find something dealing more with universal love and
Yes.
was more encompassing. Yeah. That's because I was exposed to different religions too. Like
Mm-hmm.
I tried some out or read some different books, and I thought like all had some good stuff to them, but there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't something. I always noticed there was something wrong with them too.
Mm-hmm.
Like at some points, like stuff that makes sense. So I'm like, I like to pick some stuff that worked for me, but I couldn't just be one thing or the other, like just solely based on religion. So it sounds like you kind of found that out too, or wanted to do something different.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was exactly how it happened. And it was just, just being curious, I would say, because I really wanted to belong to something. I loved just kind of like the regimented lifestyle that my dad had, like being a military man his whole life. You got to get up at a certain time, you got to do all of these things. But for me, I've always been the free spirit of the family. I've been the one to just go off and do what feels good. So I'm very much a feeling based person. And I just realized that it wasn't going to work for me, but how could I incorporate that in my life, and just being curious and going out and exploring different avenues, it was just kind of like, wow, this is very interesting. And then, when I tell you, the great thing about curiosity is when you really open yourself to a specific thing, all of a sudden different opportunities come your way. And that was really what I was exposed to. So I actually got to see many, many different perspectives. And a lot of them, it was beautiful, and I was happy that it was working for those people. But I did also see where a lot of the religion didn't really tie in the psychology, and a lot of people were going out on Friday and Saturday nights and getting fucked up, and then going to church on Sunday, or and it was just like there was a huge disconnect from how you're treating your body temple and what it is that you're really bringing out into the world, and you go repent on Sunday, and it's just like that never made sense to me. And I was always one to ask questions, and I found that when I was younger, it was more like, don't you ask these questions, but out of curiosity, I need to know.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Like there was a dissonance between like what people they weren't practicing what they were preaching,
Yeah.
it was like, and it seemed kind of odd. And that's what I was desiring, something where you're walking the walk, not just telling people what to do. So
Hmm.
and that seems like the purpose of the spiritual path is to do something that makes you a better person and hopefully inspire others along the way, so you can show people a better way of living in this, as you mentioned, this crazy system that really isn't suited to sensitive human beings. And yeah, that's really interesting because you bring up the regiment, because I was the opposite. Like I liked the regimented
Hmm.
lifestyle. It's like I was kind of nervous to venture out on my own, like when I was younger. But then I read a book on Taoism, and it says like
Hmm.
that's really not how we're supposed to live. Like we're supposed to be more free spirited and
Mm.
just let things happen to you, like just go with the flow, instead of going like against the stream. So
Hmm.
that's been one of like the things like I've had to overcome too and work on. And now it's like much better. I think there really is a lot to it when you're able to just react to like what comes to you, not
Hmm.
try to force things. Or it's easy. It's easy like when your schedule's already pre-planned, you don't have to think about anything and it's
Yeah.
convenient. Like I think a lot of people are scared of that too, the unknown.
Absolutely. Now, okay, so now you said it's much better. Do you find that you're kind of blending the two of being more in the flow, and then another part of you being regimented?
Yeah, like I still, it's hard because I can't just be completely like just let go completely, because like if I
Hmm.
have like as a healer, like I do need to keep some schedule,
Yeah.
like if someone makes an appointment with me, I'm like, oh, I decided to go to the forest today,
Right,
so
right.
there has to be some structure. But it's much more, at least personally, like it's much more loose. So,
Hmm.
and I think that's where, yeah, like I mean, like if you plan a trip, usually that you have to plan a little in advance.
Hmm.
But they're one of the spiritual teachers I like too. He said like he went to Peru for like 7 to 10 days, and it ended up being like a 2.5 month trip. Like he ended up in like it ended up in the Gaza Strip, he didn't plan any of this. And he's
Hmm.
like, the only reason I was able to do this was because I didn't have plans. If I
Hmm.
had plans, I wouldn't have been able to do all these other parts of the trip. So
Hmm.
I thought that was pretty interesting too, how you can get more out of life, like if you don't have too many plans.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure. And I have a corporate background, so I spent 9 years working at a law firm and then being a sales rep for a vitamin company. And a lot of my work in those two positions were around deadlines and working with the group. We had a marketing department. There were five of us, and we all had different responsibilities that really fed the other person's job. And so working in that environment was really good for me. But at the same time, moving now into the healing arts, and being an entrepreneur and creating my own schedule, I found that it was very tough for me to go from having this regimented lifestyle working in corporate America to making my own schedule and doing all of those things. So I literally felt like there were like 3, maybe 2 years of just, I don't know what I'm doing, because my true nature is really to be more of the free spirit, and just kind of just being the creative, and a lot of the business side, I wish I had someone to do all of that for me instead, and just allow me to go out, be creative, and not really have to work on the deadlines. But at the same time, I think that, this is the world that we live in. And it is very important to let people know when I'm available, and, when I'm going to be traveling and all of those things, because, you know, we are still kind of bonded to the time and space continuum, I guess you could say, you
Yeah,
know?
I was always going to say, like, when I first started out, and I think you met me while I was still in that phase towards
Hmm.
the end, but I was really struggling with the business side. Like, I
Hmm.
hated anything to do with business, and
Yeah.
I loved the healing, but I had to find a way to make it palatable. So, which I did with some spiritual practices. So I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, and understanding like energy exchanges and make it so it's
Hmm.
fair, because it's tough. Because you can definitely get taken advantage of if you're giving away your services either for free or too cheap, and it actually like screws you over your head. I know you have stories about that
Yeah.
too. So it's like, which you can feel free to share. But so that was really hard for me. But like you said, like if we depending on like if someone's from the truth community, we're not in the Venus Project or Money Free Society or
Right.
New Earth if you're in the spiritual community yet. So we do have to deal with money now. So it is something, unfortunately, like we have to find a way to deal with it, even when we're in this field.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it was one of those tough things. And again, coming from a corporate environment where everything was already made up, I knew how much I was making every single month, and then going into the healing arts. And when you and I met, we were both, I believe, at the very beginning. I had just moved to LA, and I was really looking to connect with other practitioners, and then what I discovered was a lot of them were really focused more on the competition aspect, and I just didn't come from that space. I wanted to collaborate and do all of those things. And I really ended up spending most of this time, because I actually moved to LA. I want to say it was about 8 or 9 months before the pandemic hit. So a lot of that time I ended up spending by myself, just developing my own way of showing up in the world and sharing my gifts. But it was definitely challenging, because again, and I think that more so it was about value, knowing what my value was at that time. And I remember creating the pricing for my offerings. And I would literally, somebody would call me and say, "Oh, well, what are your pricing?" And then I would say, "Oh, well, my private ceremony is this amount, but for you, I'll give it to you." Did it, and before they even had a chance to say yes or no, here I was just coming in, and I devalued myself. And once I became fully aware of that and just how uncomfortable I was in that space, I put specific things in place, so that I could avoid that, not avoid it, but to make it much smoother for me. And then what I would do is I would catch myself the next time. If someone asked me what my pricing was, I would direct them to my website so they can see all my offerings and what my prices are. And then they decide from there. Or I would tell them what the pricing is, and then I would take a deep breath and allow myself to sit in the silence. And that, Johnny, I have to tell you, that was probably one of the toughest things for me to do, but it was so necessary and it was so powerful, because now I'm in a position where I know my value, and I know how to say, this is my pricing. And if someone says, "Oh, well, that's a little too expensive for me," okay, well, call me when you're ready. Or I have the opportunity to then, barter if that's something that I choose to do.
Yeah. You have two great points I wanted to touch on. One
Hmm.
was like, I remember when you said that, you're like, oh, this is the healing and consciousness field.
Uh-huh.
Surely the people will be nice and friendly and be collaborative and
No,
and want to work
no.
together and share.
Rude
And I'm like,
awakening.
oh, sister. It's like, because I had like learned that lesson just recently, because I thought that too. I mean,
Yeah.
because anyone would naturally think that, it's because people preach the abundance mindset, but
Hmm.
then when you actually see like what's out there, you're like, oh boy.
Rude awakening.
Yeah,
That's for sure.
it's harsh because most well, you want to think a lot of people go into this with good intentions, and
Hmm.
there's not like and like to people, I tell them the truth, like that you'd have to like be careful like out there, because even some of the healers, like they still have a big shadow side too,
Yeah.
and they don't have good intentions. So it's something like to do your research on.
Hmm.
And yeah, if something doesn't feel right, like don't do it, like listen to your intuition. So, but yeah, I hated that. It was really harsh knowing that
Yeah.
because it would be such a better scene if like everyone did work together and there really
Hmm.
is enough for everyone. And it's not, we're not Burger King, we don't want just clients for clients' sake, like there's people that are right for me that wouldn't be right for someone else and
Hmm.
vice versa, like whoever's right for you might not be a good match for me. So
Yeah, and just to give the audience a little background on you and I, Johnny and I both are combo practitioners. It's a powerful frog medicine from the Amazon jungle, and it's the quickest detox that I'm aware of. It literally lasts about 15 to 40 minutes, just depending on the person. And when Johnny and I connected, this was again when I was fresh to LA, to the city of angels, La La Land, however you want to describe it. And I remember we met at Sage Bistro for lunch, and we both were in a space where we wanted to collaborate. And this was when he told me, he said, look, yeah, sister, a lot of people, and you know what it is? It's the scarcity mindset. And that's really what I found as I had to move through all of that. And there was a large part of it that made me upset, and really sad about it. But I was so happy to find you through all of that. And it's really like we have to really sift through, because you and I are aligned in that we hold integrity with our medicine. And, I've recently moved to Mexico. And since then, I've had a lot of people in the LA area who want to have ceremony with me. And then I'm able to refer them to you, and I'm like, hey, well, I want to connect you with a brother who is amazing at what he does. And then there we go. And I feel like, just having that network of other practitioners. And like you said, sometimes somebody might come to me and energetically we're just not a good fit. And I'm not one to just say, oh, well, this is going to be money for me, so let me just bring this person in, even though I don't feel a strong connection with them. I'd rather just send that person to you or someone else in my network.
yeah, and I think like we're a testament to that is like because we've
Hmm.
known each other for years now and there's
Hmm.
never been any trouble, we've
Yeah.
only helped each other. So it shows it can work. It doesn't have to be strictly cutthroat or competitive.
Yeah.
So, and it works better, it's nicer. But like you said, for now, since not everyone's like that, it's
Yeah.
better just to sift through and find your tribe. And combo, I'll come back to that because I want to get into
Yeah.
obviously that. But the other topic I wanted to touch on was, yeah, knowing your worth. It's important because like some people do charge too much. Like
Mhm.
it's usually what I hear out here, I call them the Hollywood healers, like they're just cashing in on their name and
Yeah.
they're barely doing anything, oddly enough. And those
Yeah.
those are the clients, they love them too, because like you don't really have to do any work. So
Yeah.
it's, I mean, no, I'm not blaming or anything. Everyone's doing what they're called to. But if you charge too little as well, it doesn't have as good effect too. And like I noticed, like it's better to be firm in your prices, like
Mhm.
if they're fair, like because you can get burned out. Like combo's intense. Like if you're an empath and you're serving combo, it like takes stuff out of you. Even if you do like set space and
Yes.
ground, like it's still like because you feel what they're going through regardless. So it is, you are using energy. So it
Absolutely.
should be, and if it's not respected, it doesn't, I really don't think it has as good effect. Like if it breaks the energy exchange some way, and I'm not saying like you shouldn't help someone in need or anything, like that's a given.
Mhm.
But like I noticed that. And sometimes if people are kind of like balking at the price, they, when I talked to them, like follow up with them, there was something else holding them back,
Mhm.
like they really weren't ready for that healing anyway. So
Mhm.
it almost kind of, and if you set the price too low, it attracts the people that aren't really serious about it,
Mhm.
like that when I was charging too little, they didn't really care afterwards, they throw away all the good effects. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's fine. Like I said, I'm not a judge, but at the same time, when you're doing this, you want it to have a good effect. That's like what we're doing it for, because we've seen what a good benefit it can have on ourselves, and we want to share it with others.
Mhm.
It's nice when clients share uplifting stories rather than like they did a combo session and then they went to In-N-Out Burger right afterwards.
Right. Oh,
So it's like
yeah. Yeah.
why did you go through all that just to like throw it away instantly?
Yeah. And I think really for me at least, and here's one thing. I don't I don't watch what other practitioners do. Like I am in my own lane. When I made my pricing, this was what I felt was aligned with me. And um, I've met a lot of people who come to me and they want to know what my pricing is. And when I tell them immediately, it's just a turn off for them, and that's okay. People who come to me are typically people who are already on their journey, who are ready to get to the next level. And my ceremonies consist of not just, it's not a, this is what I was telling a group the other day. I did a ceremony here, actually in Orange County for 7 people. And I said, I'm not a wham, bam, thank you, ma'am kind of practitioner. There is a discovery call that we do before we even go into ceremony space. I want to talk to you about intentions. I'm going to share with you how to prepare your body, how to prepare your mind. I want you to connect with the spirit of the frog to share your intentions so that when we actually come together physically, you are in a space where you are already prepared, that you're not learning everything 5 seconds before I put the medicine on you. And my ceremonies not only include the actual application of the combo medicine, we also get into the psychology about your beliefs and what's holding you back. And we really focus on that. For instance, this ceremony that I did in Orange County, there were 7 people. And we began at 10 a.m. and we finished around 4:30, 5 o'clock. A combo ceremony could easily be an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. And so as an empath, like you mentioned earlier, for me, it's very important that I connect with each person. I'm not going to share the same amount of medicine with everyone. The intentions are different for everyone as well. So being an empath and also being an intuitive, I'm able to really tune in with that person and find a way to anchor in what it is that they're wanting to get out of it. So another thing is I go to the jungle to receive the medicine directly from the frogs. I'm not ordering it online. I'm not, I'm very integral with my medicine. I know exactly where it's coming from. And it's literally from frog to my hand. And it's a whole love fest that happens. It's a really beautiful thing. So for me, it's really about the intention, also the ceremony, and most importantly, the integration afterwards. And I think that that's something that a lot of people aren't really speaking about, and people who are truly wanting to receive this healing, whatever that healing might look like. It's not about going to a ceremony. Anybody can go to a ceremony. Anybody can read a million books on spirituality and psychology and all of that. But if you are not actually embodying and integrating what it is that you're learning from these ceremonies or from these books, what good is it?
Yeah, that's such a good point. And yeah, no, I know, like, I know you. I know your ceremonies. You take them really seriously and really professional and go really in depth and like you
Yeah.
care about your clients. And they've shared great success stories. Like I know
Mhm.
you do with Instagram lives and stuff with them afterwards, or
Yeah.
they'll touch base. And yeah, they're always raving about it. So I know you do
Mhm.
quality work. And how'd you find combo? And you also do Reiki, right? And
Yeah.
other thing. How'd you find all these modalities?
Yeah. So I would say firstly, I've been doing Reiki since I want to say 2011. And that Reiki is like my foundational medicine. And I was actually doing it as a child, not realizing that it was Reiki. And my mom is from Okinawa. Reiki comes from Japan. And my mom's name is Reiko as well. And so there was like this strong connection. And I was doing Western Reiki, moved on to become a Holy Fire 2 Reiki practitioner. So like Reiki master level, moving up to like the higher realms of Reiki. And then a few years ago, a friend told me about Jikiden Reiki, which is, Jikiden means direct in Japanese. And it's actually the direct teachings from Dr. Yusui, the one who created Reiki. And once I learned Jikiden Reiki, I just realized how it was in my DNA. And I was just like, wow, this is so powerful. So from there, this is now the only Reiki that I practice. And with regards to the combo, I had been traveling to the Amazon jungle in Peru since 2015, doing ayahuasca ceremonies for my own personal healing. And when I went in January of 2015 for the first time, I did 5 ceremonies, and I had a death and a rebirth on the very last one, and it was extremely powerful. And when I returned to the States, and I was doing Reiki, I found that my Reiki sessions were so much stronger. We would literally transport to the jungle while I'm doing a session for someone, and I was able to tap into their energy in a much different way. And what I really feel happened was that through those ayahuasca ceremonies, I was able to peel back these layers of traumas and fears, many lifetimes, and also childhood things. And I just kept uncovering and uncovering things. And I can't even tell you exactly how or what shifted in my Reiki sessions, but what I found was that I was just able to incorporate more shamanic things, and that's really incorporating nature and remembering that I am nature. And so I had been going to the Peruvian Amazon for I want to say 4 years before I discovered Kambo. And when I did, I had no idea that I would actually even be sharing the medicine. I went because I went with a friend, and he had really bad migraines, and he said that Kambo helped him with that. So I go to the jungle, and he introduced me to his friends there, who are now my jungle family. And I did Kambo for the first time without doing any research. And what I found was a week later, when I returned home, I was eating my favorite meal and watching Netflix. And at that time, I was eating emotionally, and so I would literally eat food and then think about what else is in the refrigerator, because I was disregarding and kind of suppressing all of the things that needed to come up, all of the things that I really needed to face. And on this particular day, I put my fork down as soon as I got full, and I looked at the food, and I kind of looked up, and I was like, well, who the fuck are you? Like, where is this coming from? And I realized that the only thing that I had done differently was Kambo. And so it wasn't like an immediate effect, like right after I did it. It was literally a week later. And then I started doing more research, and I found that it really helps with addiction and depression and anxiety. And I said, oh my goodness, a few months later, next thing you know, I'm back in the jungle, and my jungle brother actually said, and when I told him I was coming to the jungle, he said, do you want to learn Kambo? And I said, absolutely. There was no hesitation. And I literally went into the jungle with him. And I ended up doing like this like 5-day training of like receiving the medicine and different amounts of medicine, going to connect with the frogs, really getting an in-depth perspective on them. And then while I was there, he gave me a book by the late Peter Gorman. Shout out to Peter Gorman and all of his research. He is really the one who brought this medicine, I feel, to the Western world through his book Sapo in My Soul. And so I read this book and really couldn't put it down while I was in my training. And it was deeply transformative, and made this strong connection with the first frog I received medicine from on a Pisces full moon. I'm a Pisces. And it just ended up being this very powerful night, still not knowing that I was going to be sharing the medicine. Returned back to Houston, where I lived at the time. And I was on the board of a nonprofit in Tampa, Florida, and I would fly back every year for a fundraising event that I would chair and host. And as I was leaving my place in Houston, I got this message that said, take Kambo with you. And I said, okay, go back and grab the medicine, go to Tampa. We have our volunteers setting up the event. And this was my 7th year doing it. So we all knew what needed to be done. And once we set up the event, we're just hanging out. And all of a sudden I start talking about Kambo. Next thing I know, 3 people raised their hand and said, I want to do it while you're here. And I said, okay. And at the time, I think I charged like $75 or something, and it paid for my entire trip. And then, still not knowing that I would be sharing this medicine, my plan was to move to the jungle with my jungle brother and sister, and start a retreat there. And then I got the message when I returned to Houston that it was not time for me to move to the jungle, that I needed to share this medicine and travel with it. And literally since then, that's what I've been doing, and just incorporating other shamanic tools and other practices in my work.
Yeah, it's good. Like, I know you have good intuition, and it's good you listened to it, because I could certainly see you running a retreat center. Like, that would be
Ah,
amazing. Like,
wow.
maybe one day. But
Yeah.
you're right. Like, your travels are important. Like, you've
hmm
been bringing great work all around.
hmm
So I think that's a good point. Like, even if something's for you and you could do it and you would serve the greater good, timing's important too. So
Mhm.
if you have another calling, it's good to listen to it. And because now it's not, I know you don't call them retreats, but
Mhm.
just so that like viewers and listeners can kind of understand the initial concept, you do things that are like similar to like retreats, but they're something different.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking note of that. A lot of people, even though I say it, a lot of people just still don't really get it. I call them inner journey immersions. I feel like the word retreat is kind of like I'm retreating from my home. I'm retreating from this part of me, and I'm kind of going out and then coming back in. And I look at it more like, no, what we're doing is we're going on a deep inner journey. And the immersion, of course, is going to be immersing yourself into these different medicines, and then of course after that integrating. And so although I don't have a retreat space, I recently did an inner journey immersion in Tulum, known as Liberate, and it was 5 days in the Maya jungle. And again, very important to me, to honor the land where I'm at. Now that I'm living in Mexico, I brought in a woman by the name of Amaya, and she is a Maya descendant. And she came in and facilitated the temescal, which is very similar to a Native American sweat lodge. And so we honored the land by having her. And I was so fortunate to have experienced her medicine on my birthday, and then brought her in a couple months later for the inner journey immersion. And what we did during this time was, there were 11 of us in total. I brought in some amazing facilitators, Malika, Tanae, and T-Bird. And we basically came together and we did this amazing journey of inner child healing, where we focused on cleansing the body through the temescal, and then we moved into Kambo, so clearing out the body, just really doing a deep cleanse of the internal organs, the emotional body, the physical body, and the mental body as well. Then we moved into some play. We did a cacao ceremony and incorporated painting, which was amazing. And from there, the next day we moved into a powerful mushroom journey with shamanic drumming and music. And I can't even tell you, it was just beyond words, beyond what I could have ever imagined. And these are the kind of things that I'm moving into now. Much smaller group ceremonies, private ceremonies, also online offerings, but mainly really bringing people to the medicine in a way where they feel safe and they feel comfortable being vulnerable and being able to really tune in with their inner child, or reconnect and remember their inner child, because most of this work is really that, you know.
Yeah, and I was like listening to some of the people that done work with you, and they had a lot of epiphanies and
Mhm,
realizations and downloads from doing this type of
mhm,
thing. So it's really profound work you and they are doing. And
mhm,
that last one did look amazing too. It was beautiful, from just like what the modalities you were doing and
mhm,
also the location.
mhm.
It was, yeah, and damn, I didn't realize that about retreat. And I really know the word magic too, but I'm like, you're right. That does kind of sound like you're retreating from yourself or your
Yeah.
problems. Man, I never put that together. So even I'm learning as
Yeah,
I
and
go.
that's really my own thing. I think that everybody has, the words that feel right to them. And energetically, I was just like, ooh, retreat just feels like, ooh, that just feels like a lot. Let's shift this to inner journey immersion. That
Yeah.
that feels more aligned with the type of work that I do.
And if someone's called to you, like, what's the first step? Should they reach out to you, or like, did you have any recommendations before they start even doing that?
Yeah, well, I feel, and again, like I said earlier, I feel like most people who are called to working with me are people who are already on their journey. And look, this isn't really like, I think a lot of people see like their life separate from their spiritual path and their spiritual journey. And the truth is, it's all the same. We are spiritual beings having a human experience, and the programs and the systems that we are literally in the midst of breaking away from right now have taught us and conditioned us to believe that they're separate. And the reality is, it's all the same. So I feel that for me, it's people who are already on this journey of just deepening their connection with themselves and remembering who they are. And so I'm very, you know me, Johnny. I'm very laid back. I'm very easygoing. I'm a people person. I love, people typically will reach out to me through Instagram or on my website, or actually a lot of people reach out to me by word of mouth. So that I feel is even though we have all of these different ways of connecting and all of that, I feel like word of mouth is the best, because when you have a very profound experience by meeting someone and connecting with somebody, I feel like that is like the strongest testimony that one could ever have. But yeah, I would say all the ways, however they want to reach out to me, it's all good.
And plant medicines, you mentioned them.
Yeah.
What experiences have you had on them, and would you recommend them to others, and like any particular order, or does it depend on certain things? Like, what advice do you have on plant medicines?
Whew. So first of all, let me just humbly bow to the great grandmother ayahuasca. I can tell you right now that I would not be sharing in this position and in the way that I'm sharing my gifts if it was not for her. Um, I was, I'm a feeling based person. I'm intuitive, and I was called to ayahuasca in a very synchronistic way. And first, let me say the first medicine, the first psychedelic rather plant medicine that I worked with was mushrooms. And I remember having this fear around, having a bad trip because of what other people had spoken about. And a friend of mine came to me, and every Friday we would get together. Shout out to Rick in Tampa, Florida. We get together every Friday and just catch up on the week. And he brought some mushrooms soaked in lemon juice. And I said, he said, do you want to do these? And I was like, oh, hell no. I've heard some horrible things. But then I had this feeling. I was like, well, you know what? I'm at home and I'm safe. I feel comfortable with him. That was my first experience. And it really opened up my eyes to just how we are multidimensional beings, and that there's a whole other realm outside of what we physically see and what we physically touch. And from there, literally, I want to say a few weeks later, I ended up meeting this shaman in Raleigh, North Carolina. And at the time, I was carrying a lot of tension in my jaws, which, if you know energy, that comes from me not speaking my truth, right? Anything around the throat, the mouth area. And that's really what it was. I laid on a table, and he sat across the room, literally did not touch me or anything. And about an hour later, when I opened my eyes, he told me that he connected with me in the ether. And he said that he was like, how do you feel? And I said, I had just done the mushrooms like a couple weeks earlier. And I said, man, I said, have you ever done mushrooms? And he just looked at me, he started laughing. And I said, well, you don't have to answer that. I said, but that's how I feel. I want to go outside and I want to go hug a tree. I want to take my shoes off, lay in the grass. And when I tell you that pain that was in my jaw to this day, completely gone. And that was like 2012, I want to say 2011, 2012, somewhere around there. And I asked him where he discovered this power, and he said that he went to Peru. And I said, well, one day I'm going to return to you. I'm going to go to Peru. And I was just putting it out there, not even knowing. And in 2014, I moved to Austin, Texas, and I was watching a documentary on ayahuasca. And while I was watching this documentary, I had this vision of myself in the jungle doing ayahuasca. And I didn't have the money to go. And my brother was visiting me. And I said, Malcolm, I said, I had this vision of me in the jungle. And I said, but I don't have the money to go. And he looked at me, he said, Angie, don't worry about that. He said, just put it out there and let it go. And I said, you're right. And I literally just put the thought out. And next thing I know, the very next day, I get a message that says, call Fidelity. I told you I worked at a law firm for 9 years. I was vested and I had all this money that I forgot about. That next day, called Fidelity, had that money, looked up, didn't know where to look. And I just typed in Peru, ayahuasca. The first place that popped up was Blue Morpho Tours. Blue is my favorite color. And just like that, I booked it. 2 months later, I was there. Boom. 5 ceremonies later, death and a rebirth, massive transformation. And I actually returned to Blue Morpho Tours, I want to say over the next 3 years. So they were very instrumental in my plant medicine journey. And this is what I will say for people who are new to this path. Mushrooms was my first dipping my toe in there. And I look at mushrooms as, a gentle knock on the door. You go in and it's just like, oh, wow, flowers and roses, and it smells so good in here, right? And then up level from that, ayahuasca. Ayahuasca is you're busting that bitch down, and you are literally going into all the rooms, kicking in all the closet doors, going into the crevices of the corners that you didn't even know were there, going into the darkest parts. And that's how I would describe ayahuasca. So for me, it was that. I think that for those of you who are new, if you are able to really get like a full immersive experience, Kambo is such a beautiful way to go, because Kambo actually cleans and prepares the body. And it's such a powerful medicine to start with. And then let's say you want to do ayahuasca, or you want to even do mushrooms or wachuma, also known as San Pedro, the grandfather medicine. Then I would say go into those, because when you're able to peel back some layers of some fears and some things that you've repressed, and cleaning out the emotional and mental body, you're able to go much deeper with the other medicines.
Yeah, that's great advice. And well, I'm glad you brought up Wachuma. That's one of my favorites too.
Really?
Yeah, because
Uh-huh.
my heart chakra was blocked early on in my journey.
Uh-huh.
So I needed to help open that, which it did. It's very hard opening, and you're very forgiving on it too. Like you
Ooh.
could pretty much forgive anyone on it. So, and the trick is to take that lesson with you afterwards.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I thought that was really beneficial, and it's more gentle, where ayahuasca can be brutal. I had sessions with it where it was just like shame and regrets all night long. And
Mhm.
like the littlest thing I did was just amplified thousands of times. So
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh man, but it was good. I needed to see it. It was so crazy, because like growing up, we just thought psychedelics make you crazy. But if anything, it really just made me more moral of a person. It's
Mhm.
like the complete opposite of what they warned us as kids about. So
Yeah.
I'm glad the truth's getting out about them now, and they can see how beneficial it could be.
Yeah, and I thank you for this platform. I think that it's, we are moving into a new time where people are looking for a deeper healing in different ways, and we have, and not to say that pharmaceuticals are not the way to go, or going to a doctor isn't the way to go. I feel like there's a time and place for everything. And I personally, actually, now that I think about it really quickly, I was moving through depression, and I was addicted to marijuana. That's something that I didn't mention. This is really what led me to the journey. When I realized that these systems that we were in, just how fucked up they were, and how it was so far from who I was, I started smoking weed as a way to escape my reality, and that became an addiction. And from there, I just had all this anger inside that I needed to release, and I didn't know where to look or who to ask or anything. And then plant medicine revealed itself to me, and it was such a powerful thing. I had digestive issues, and again, going back to energy, if you know digestive issues, a lot of that energetically has to do with not being able to digest your life and the things that are happening. And as an empath, and not even knowing I was an empath at that time, these were all the things that were coming up. And so ayahuasca really helped me in that. And then later on, a few years later, I incorporated wachuma, which was a very, very deep journey for me. And a lot of people say wachuma is very like light and all of that. It's a grandfather medicine. It's a cactus medicine in the family of peyote. And for me, I did it 12 hours after an ayahuasca ceremony, a very deep and intense ayahuasca ceremony that surrounded divine feminine energy. And then I did wachuma 12 hours later, and this was all in the jungle. I've only done ayahuasca and a lot of the plant medicines in the jungle, and because I feel like the jungle's able to hold the space in a much different way than being in different spaces. But wachuma was so deep for me, and it's like I'm highly sensitive, and I wish that I could just have like this very light feeling, but I always feel like I go really deep with wachuma.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, because it's actually really strong and it lasts a long time. Where like ayahuasca is 6 to 8 hours, wachuma can be 8 to 10, 16 in some places. Like I heard that Clinic Arrhythmia stopped serving it because people were complaining it lasts too long.
Mine was 20 hours.
Wow, so I believe
and
it. That's
very,
crazy.
very deep. It was wild.
That is
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I can only imagine. And the last time I did it, while it normally is like that warm sensation and pleasant, and I'm sensitive, so I get like an hour of like a mini Aya journey on it too. But the last time I did it, it was actually got a little dark, but I did it on a cold morning. And instead of like drumming and stuff, we listened to this like kind of dark flute music or what. So it like kind of changed the experience. So it wasn't like nearly as dark as ayahuasca. So, but it did show stuff. Like I said, I needed to see it. It wasn't bad by any means. But so it's not, people should, like, I'm glad you mentioned that. They shouldn't go in it just thinking it's just going to be like pleasure, you know, the whole time. It can go deep. It is a powerful medicine in its own right. So I'm glad you mentioned that. And there's so many good topics here. If you come back, we could talk about doing the jungle versus doing it here. Now, if someone's at the point where they're ready to work for you and they want to reach out to you, what method do you recommend? Do you social media or website? Like, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, the best way to get a hold of me, I would say, is going to be my website. It's heyangieb.com, and that's HEY Angie B. Or you can, if you want to see what I have going on. I don't post every single day. I'm not really a social media guru or anything, but my Instagram is hey.angieb, and that's HEY.angieb.
All right, great. Thank you. And yeah, like I said, I've known her for quite a while now, and she's one person I could vouch for, does amazing quality work, and has never let me down or others down. And that's rare in this field, as we were talking about. So I can give her the highest possible recommendation to check out her work and sit with her, one of her services. And I'm glad you got to listen and watch her story and her recommendations today. We got another great episode coming up, so like, follow, and subscribe if you want to be notified. I start a Patreon. Any amount you can donate is greatly appreciated. Thanks again for tuning in. Be seeing you.
Peace.
You've been listening to the Dystopian Renaissance. Spirituality, healing, consciousness, truth. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. And tell a friend or two. That would help also. We'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at the Dystopian Renaissance. And please find the website at www.thedystopianrenaissance.com.